Gather around, children, and hear the tale. The tale of Top Hat Jack. Now Jack was an undertaker who lived down the street. He'd tip his hat to everyone he would meet. He got his name because he was never seen without his hat. Some say that it was stitched up from an old dead cat. He was lean, hollow-faced, and considerably tall, with piercing dark-set eyes placed deep in his skull. And when the sun went down, that's when Jack got to work. Deep down inside the old, cold, dingy cellar where he would lurk, preparing the dead, decomposing bodies for their final resting place. With a stitch here and a stitch there, he'd sometimes produce a smile on their face. He enjoyed his work a great deal, excited by the prospect of a new plague coming round. He relished the idea of slipping another body into the ground. He kept to himself, no wife or children. No one really knew where Jack had come from. Maybe from another country. Maybe just down the road, the city of Crum. One cold, dark morning, with mourners at the sight of a grave where Mr. and Mrs. Turnip had lost their young knave, Mrs. Turnip demanded to see her boy one last time. With tears in her eyes, she let out a cry.
One last time? I've got to see my boy, my beautiful, lovely little Lloyd.
Falling upon the casket.
Oh, Lloyd. Oh, my boy, my
Mr. Turnip instructed Jack to halt the burial and open the lid. Jack's eyes grew wide, his jaw slowly slacked, his voice trembling.
Now, sir, I know you two love your child dearly, but the boy's been in the box nearly a week, and chances are it's gone to reek.
I don't care.
Mrs. Turnip cried out. Mr. Turnip, shaken to the core, turned to Jack with a frightful stare.
Do as she wishes.
Then he dropped his head. Jack, still in disbelief, shook his head and quietly said,
I understand your grief, but there's not nothing you can do to bring your boy back. Your boy is dead, and that's a fact.
All the mourners were silent as they stood by the grave, not knowing what to do or what to say. Then Mrs. Turnip spoke in a small voice.
I will not say it again. Open the lid.
Then Jack swallowed hard, for he knew what was hid. As the crowd gathered closer to see the remains, Jack slowly removed the lid, exposing what was left of the kid. The crowd gasped as the turnips grasped one another in shock. A sound of horror resounded through the graveyard. The unspeakable had been exposed, but there in the coffin was nothing at all. Jack thrust his hands into the air.
It's a miracle! A miracle! The boy has been resurrected and is in the arms of the Lord!
The sound of silence broken only by the whistle of a distant train.
Hang him!
Cried one. Another grabbed Jack by the coat.
Where's the boy, Jack?
Jack shaking his head.
How would I know? What about my sister?
And my poor old father.
And now this, the turnip's lad.
Their voices rising with each accusation. Jack, fearing for his life,
Maybe it was the
he
rats.
said without hesitation. The crowd, overcome by anger, charged him and lifted Jack into the air.
Let him meet his maker. It's only fair.
Jack struggled to break free, but it was all in vain. The turnips
Stop,
caught in the
this is
middle
madness.
begged the crowd to refrain.
You mustn't do it this way.
The crowd cried out for blood.
Take him to the tracks. There we'll have justice for this Mr. Jacks.
I swear before heaven, I don't know what happened to the boy.
Jack cried out, being rather coy. For 1 week ago, when the boy was brought to Jack, he thought to himself,
Why bury the lad in an expensive coffin when I can bury him in a sack?
disposing of the body in a small, shallow grave, just outside of the city where poor Lloyd was laid, knowing later he would return to the grave and dig up the coffin and use it for another day. His plan would have been complete, if not for a mother's love that reaches far beyond here and above. The crowd feverishly made their way to the railroad track, where they laid and tied old Top Hat Jack. As the train's whistle blew, alerting them all to the train's arrival, it took on an atmosphere of a church revival. Shouts of joy and cries of tears filled the air as the train approached. Jack could feel the rumble, the vibration in the rails. He tried to break free of the ropes, to no avail. The closer the train got, the more his body would shake.
The
Turnips tried to quiet the mob to gain some control.
Please release this man and let him be tried in the court.
But it was too late, for in that moment the train rushed by, taking Jack with it without a sigh. No scream from Jack was heard, no cry for help. Just one phrase slipped from his lips.
I'll be back, and you'll all be sorry for what you did, for this and that.
As the crowd dispersed, feeling guilty for what they had done, they all went back to their homes, not speaking a word. But there, at the site of revenge, where the final deed had taken place, there was not a sign left of poor old Jack, except his top hat in the middle of the track. But legend has it, if you dare make your way to the south side of town and close your eyes, you'll hear the sound of a distant train and its whistle blowing. They say around midnight you can still see Top Hat Jack standing there on the track, but with a knowing look in his eyes that one day he will be back.